without them really knowing,
definitely.
I guess. I don't know.
No, I feel
Sorry,
like
I just waffled. You
no.
say what you're saying.
I can continue waffling in that direction because I love because you can treat it like it's just the sprinkles. And like essentially like a mask, like, here's the product and we're going to decorate it with these nice pictures and arrows and like you'll get excited about it because we know that people will buy things with this decoration on it, whatever. You can think of it like that sense, but I just think people don't recognize that the audience is smart enough and intuitive enough to pick up that that's inauthentic. But also in the same thing, like, aside from the fact that it's an inauthentic approach, it's also like you're missing an opportunity to communicate the real values behind the company or behind the product, whatever, which might actually excite like a group of people and reach an audience and make them like loyal to whatever it is that you as a company value. I think like it's an opportunity to communicate at a way that goes beyond just the written word, and I think therefore is more accessible to like everyone, like whether or not you can, like you're literate or you know English well or whatever. Like it's in the same way that art, like it transcends, or ideally good art transcends like all levels of society and like all demographics. Like everyone can appreciate it and feel it. Like I think design is that, but it has an intent to communicate something about the brand.
We went deep just then.
Some people are thinking. I think what really bugs me is I get asked just to copy, like as a designer, like I get asked, oh, let's just make it look like this company. And I'm like, okay, yes, but why are we communicating what that company is communicating? Like, is it coming, like, do we agree with their values or do we just like the way it looks? I feel like as soon as you're copying someone else, you're not sure of your own values, right? Like, because if you were confident in who you were as a brand, as a person, whatever, you would know what to communicate about yourself. Whereas as soon as you're not, then you start looking at other things for inspiration. So it's always a
Yeah, exactly. That's because they think it's like just about how it looks. Not about the core. Anyway, I wanted to go to you being a developer and like creative technology, maybe even with like, I feel like the point of me doing this podcast is to introduce different young people or whoever's watching to like the different ideas of what different people do professionally. For example, like maybe I don't know if it's a stereotype, but like I know there's things about like girls who code and things like that. Like maybe there's not enough like female developers and things like that. And also like with me, when I think of development, I think of it being something that I can't do. Like, oh, there's creatives here. There's me thinking about colors. And then when I look at code, it's like, it feels very intimidating. But then there's also lots of like developers that are like fairly binary and like stuff like that. But working in my company S1T2 and working with previous like creative developers like yourself, it's like it's just a different way of being creative and different. And it's like it's not the truth that is creatives here and developments here. It's just you're being creative. I can't get my head around it, but like you can. So maybe like you've spoken to me before about like how the development side is a different part of your brain that sometimes allows you to take a break from being a designer and stuff. So yeah, maybe talk about you being a developer and technologist and engineer.
I feel like, so for me, development has always been like it even started with like school, right? Like I loved maths and physics, like they were my subjects up until year 12. But I also loved like textiles and art and like society and culture. Like, so it was like very much like I loved ones that are about, you learn the rules, like the principles, or like first principles as they call it. And then you apply that like to the science. But then like the art stuff is like, there are no rules. And as soon as you start following the rules, you're like buggering it up. Like you want to push out of the rules. So like, and I was always drawn to both of those, to the point where like I had teachers, like my physics teacher was like, he's like, oh, are you sure you should, like, he's like, you're getting good marks, but are you sure you should be doing this because your other classes, like, you're the only one in here who does art, kind of thing. Like, it was just kind of like, they could see that it was a mismatch. Like, they're like, maybe you should stick to one kind of grouping of classes. But for me, it always, like, it felt like it was satisfying both parts of how my brain worked. And I think the more I think about it as well, like, the more I realize that, like, I think my brain just likes, like, systems. Like, it likes figuring out how things work in terms of, like, not just for like the individual parts of what makes it up, but how the parts interact. And for me, that I can see that in coding. So that coding, it doesn't work unless you figure out how this bit talks to this bit. And how, like, this component can connect to this component. Like, it's all about, like, a systems thinking approach. And my approach to design, which is definitely not necessarily the only way or the best way, it's just the way that I've learned to do it, is, like, I really enjoy finding, like, the core concept and, like, making every part kind of relate to that and talk to it and tell the same story. So I feel like I've kind of pulled them, try to bring them together in my brain. But back to your question, like, I think some days I'm not in a mood to kind of reinvent the wheel or to think conceptually, or, like, it can be, like, hourly, it can be daily, it can be weekly, but, like, I definitely flip between the two. And, like, yes, those days for me, coding is, like, the best thing in the world. I'm like, I would do this forever. Why would I bother designing? Like, this is great. And then other days I'm like, following the rules seems like the worst idea in the world. I don't want to do that. I want to be a rebel. I want to disrupt. I want to question things. And on those days I love creating. So, like, I've always found it like such a satisfying career choice to pick doing design and development, because, like, at all points I'm feeling satisfied. As long as I'm in the opportunity where I kind of get to pick what to do with my day. Obviously not every career, like, you get, like, you might just get fed the task in the morning. But yeah, most of the time I've been pretty lucky that I get to choose how my day turns out. Which comes down to, like, good bosses.
How do you think
trusting bosses?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, actually I'm kind of curious to hear more about, like, so you're based in the Central Coast, which is what,